Hello everyone, this is the first of 3 lessons on something called the 10 economic principles. And when we think about it, economics is a framework for sound judgment. So the first of these 3 lessons on the 10 economic principles has to do with something called the 4 S's. Now, if entrepreneurship is solving problems for profit, then these 4 economic concepts help us to get a better understanding of what the problem is and what our opportunities are. Then we can answer the question, is it worth it? Now, can you guess what the first S might be? Well, if you had guessed scarcity, you would be right. Scarcity is the basis for the study of economics. And really, when you think about it, we live in a paradox of a world of limited resources that's full of humans with unlimited wants and needs. What this does is it forces us to choose. Think about for a second the description of sound judgment from our foundational principles. It says that we use economic thinking to create the greatest benefit while using the least resources. Scarcity is a problem we all face. And really, when it comes down to it, there are only 3 basic resources. And in order from the most to the least scarce, what do you think the first one would be? Well, if you guessed time, you'd be right. The clock is always ticking. Time is one thing that we have to spend even if it's doing nothing. We are constantly spending time and we can't get it back. How about the second resource? What's something that we all have and that everyone wants from everyone else? What's something that your teachers ask you to pay them or your parents ask you to pay them? Well, if you guessed attention, hey, you're right again. Now, the third one, the last one, what about that one? The only one left. Money. Money is just a consolidated representation of everything else that you can buy. It's actually one of the easiest one of the 3 to get. It's the least scarce resource and it can be exchanged for any other resource. In the market, we typically trade time and attention for money. We spend money to buy time of others or time for ourselves. Entrepreneurs must get and keep your attention before they can even get your time or your money. How about the second of the 4 S's? What do you think that might be? If scarcity is the first, what do you think the second might be? Well, if you can't guess from the picture, it's self-interest. Now, it's hard to understand the paradigm that self-interest is very different from being selfish. It's rational to assume that everyone wants to take care of themselves first, but the enlightened idea of self-interest says, I don't get what I want unless I help you get what you want. The key here is that trade or voluntary exchange helps us get what we want and need without harming others in the process. The more we consider the wants and the needs of others, the better we can serve those needs. It builds more trust in society and greater success for ourselves. Think about the description of win-win from the foundational values. It says cooperation creates real value in society for yourself and for others. At the heart of every decision to deal with scarcity, we will tend to ask, what do I want? But our goal is to understand and apply the better question of what do others want? What's in it for the customer? Then we can ask, what's in it for me? Now, the third of the 4 S's. What do you think these all have in common? Sure, they're competitors. Sure, they're rivals. But what makes someone choose Chevrolet over Ford or Target over Walmart? Well, it's something that we actually talked about when we talked about the CPV triangle, and it is subjective value. Remember that people value different things at different times for different reasons, and it's always changing. Think about the foundational value of knowledge, which says seek and use the best knowledge, drive change that benefits others, and exemplify humility and intellectual honesty. Subjective value is about how we feel about something, and entrepreneurs need to ask that about others, especially their customers. How will the customer feel about this? How do I want them to feel? The big hurdle for entrepreneurs is to realize that they are not the customer. When entrepreneurs look for problems to solve, they will naturally gravitate to their own problems, and that's an okay place to start. But they should try to think outside of themselves. This is how they grow as entrepreneurs. And the only way to get to, to grow is to get to know our customers as well as we possibly can. So, and you ask yourself, what do you really know about your customer? Now, the fourth S, this is the hardest one, mostly because of how we feel about the past. It's kind of like it's a problem that entrepreneurs need to solve for themselves. And if you can't guess what it is based on the picture, well, it's called sunk cost. These are costs that have already been incurred and cannot be recovered. They are spent resources of time, attention, and money that are unrecoverable. We are seeking knowledge about our customer, and we have assumptions about what they want and what they will trade to or buy from us. But the instant we realize our assumptions are off, we need to pivot. We need to change. But this is naturally difficult because we have put our hearts and our souls, our blood, sweat, and tears into it. Another fun way to think about sunk costs is to look at all those late night commercials that start out with, "Are you tired of," whatever it happens to be. These are marketing pieces that are attempting to speak to your sunk costs, the thing that you've been dealing with that you would just rather give up on or let someone else deal with. These are great sunk cost examples. Remember our foundational values about knowledge and sound judgment? Well, sunk costs is a big part of those too. One of the questions that entrepreneurs ask themselves is, how can I test my assumptions? It takes a great deal of humility to realize that you could be wrong. But it's much cheaper to build a minimum viable product, take it to market, and measure how your assumptions lined up, and then learn from that. Then pivot. Sometimes you pivot a little, you change a little, or you change a lot. But don't be afraid to punt if it comes down to it. Success will come faster and cheaper that way. And so this has been our first of 3 lessons on 10 economic principles. We're talking about the 4 S's. Scarcity, self-interest, subjective value, and sunk costs.